friends, Miss Moore here, and I'm going to be talking to you this week about paper seed planting. So right now it's springtime. There's a lot going on out in the yard, lots of birds, lots of growth happening, and I want to help out a little bit with that. So we're starting a new garden, and in order to attract pollinators like bees and butterflies to our yard, we're doing some planting of wildflowers. There's a few different kinds of wildflowers. For butterflies, we planted some milkweed, and then what I'm going to be planting today, or making today and planting in probably a few days after it dries, is just some wildflower seeds. So I have a few things in front of me. I have a blender, I have a source of water, and I have a very important ingredient for this project, recycled paper. This recycled paper I went ahead and tore up before the video. This is a combination of construction paper, cardstock, typing paper. This is various shades of purple, light purple, dark purple, white. And most likely, just like if you're mixing paint, when you mix this up in a blender with water, it's going to produce probably a light purple color. When you tear up your pieces, you want them to be about inch by inch or slightly smaller. So when you tear them, you are opening up the fibers of the paper. You are creating like an open pathway for water to enter into the paper. A lot of times people ask me, can I use scissors to cut up the paper? You could. You might would have a little harder time blending it just because it's not going to soak it up as fast. And sometimes when you look up how to make paper, you'll see directions about letting the paper soak. That would be a good time for that. But for this method where you're tearing it, you don't really even need to let it soak at all. But what we're going to do here to start with, I have a container here that does have markings on the side of it just so you can see the measurements. Typically, if I'm making a larger batch, I want to use something like this so that I can keep up with what I'm doing. But if you're doing something at home, like today in your kitchen with your family, you can use any type of bowl or cup at all. This is just paper mixed with water. You want to know that the amount of paper you use the exact same amount of water. So if I were to reach in my bag and get out my scrap paper and fill it up to say, and I'm pressing it down, I'm kind of compacting it to the 4-ounce line. I'm gonna add a little more paper to do that. And then I would fill the water up twice that. So paper comes up to 4, I'll put my water up to 8 ounces. So I'll go ahead and do that now. So take my water, pour it right on in. Perfect. Okay, so then with this, I just go ahead and pour this right in my blender. If any of that scrap paper got stuck in there, you can just use your hand to get it out. If you want to use a spoon, that's fine too. All right. Put your lid on your blender. And again, this is probably something you want to do with your family. This is a fun activity. When you do this, you're going to be able to produce, I would say, about 15 different paper balls. There's another method also. I'm going to be showing you the paper balls, but I'm going to be showing you just a tidbit. Another method, instead of making a ball, like say a ball out of clay, would be to actually push your pulp into a silicone mold. That works really well too. For this, I want to show you the ball making technique, just because I really like it. All right, let's turn our blender on. Okay, it sounds good. It looks good. Let me get a spoon out. We'll see if it really is good. Okay, yeah, this is good. So this is the paper pulp. It is full of water. It's soft. It almost looks like colored oatmeal. So this is the texture you're going for. If it's really chunky, or if you can even hear your blender sounding choppy, that might mean that you need to add more water. Now about my blender, I got it at Goodwill. I use it primarily for art projects. However, I have definitely used my real blender before to make paper and then washed it out afterwards. But if you can get you a cheap blender, that might be better for this purpose. Okay, so now we're gonna mix our seeds in. I have wildflower seeds here. This is just a mix, and then for 8 ounces, I have figured out that if I use a tablespoon of seeds, that's about right. Okay. So I'm gonna pour my pulp back into my container. Okay. We are done with our blender. I'll push that aside and wash that out later. And then So I have a tablespoon here. I'm gonna reach it in. Got about a tablespoon of seeds here. Just jostle that right on in there. Stir it up. When you stir, you want to stir it pretty gently. You don't want to like beat it or anything. Using your spoon and your hand would be great. It's not like you can stir it too hard. Just don't like use a whisk or anything electric or motorized. Okay, now like I said, there's a lot of moisture in here. When I go to squeeze out a ball, I want you to think about if you were using your hands with Play-Doh or clay, or actually I'll mention mud. There is a technique that people use with flower seeds to make something called a seed bomb. They use it with mud or clay. So if you don't have a blender and you don't have a lot of scrap paper and you're not able to make this mixture that we're making here, you could easily go outside. You could get you a combination of red mud, probably most of us have in our backyard here in Georgia. Put it in a container. You might want to add water to it so you can kind of stir it up. Add your seeds in the same way that we just did, and then you would use the same technique that I'm getting ready to show you. Okay, so because this has so much excess water in it, I'm gonna get my measuring cup back out so that when I squeeze out my first paper pulp ball, it doesn't get water all over my counter. And I'm also gonna get out another little plate. Okay, so let's see here. Got my plate here, got my paper pulp here, and got my water catcher here. So I'm going to use my hand to start with. I'm going to actually scoop out a pretty decent sized amount. I'm going to put it over the container that's catching water, and I'm going to squeeze it together. I'm actually pushing it together, intending to squish out that water. Now, even though I grabbed a pretty big scoop of paper pulp, this is making a fairly small sized ball, and as I'm doing it, I'm using my fingertips and I'm kind of pinching it as I shape it to make that ball. So now I have made a paper pulp seed ball. That's one. And I still have, a ton of stuff left. So I'm not going to keep you forever as I make these, but I'll show you. I grabbed a little bit more that time. Again, I'm squeezing the water out on purpose. I'm pushing it together. And I'm forming a ball as I go. If I thought that I could just squish it all out real flat and then turn it into a ball, I would have a harder time with it staying compacted together. So you want to really squeeze out the water as you're shaping your ball. Got it? Okay, so I'm going to continue making these balls, but I wanted to go ahead and show you how they look when they're dry. So I have this little plate here. Looks like dessert to me. These are paper pulp balls, just exactly like I just made, but they have already dried for 24 hours. They are ready to plant right now. These are the silicone shapes. Mine were stars. So these I like a lot. They dry for more like 48 hours. Some recipes online show you that you can make it and then pop it right out of the silicone mold, but in my experience, when you pop it right after you make it, it kind of loses its shape or even falls apart altogether. So I left mine in my silicone mold for about 48 hours, and then I popped them out, and they look good. They are ready to plant, just like you plant a seed, like any other seed. You go outside, most wildflower seeds, they want you to plant a hole about 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/2 inch. Dig that out, even your hand, tiny shovel, you just place it right in the ground, cover it back up with dirt, and you water it. Watering it is what starts the germination. Those seeds need to stay moist until you see growth. So once you plant this, whether you plant it to start with in a pot or whether you plant it outside, which is typically where you plant wildflowers, you want to water it a little bit every day. All right, I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, reach out to me. I would love to answer anything for you. I have had a lot of fun working on this. My little boys had a lot of fun too, and I can't wait to see our growth. I'll send pictures or post pictures once I start seeing something happen. Thank you. Goodbye.